Okay, Chevra, I'm thrilled and happy to start Mishnayos Maseches Sanhedrin that I'm learning with my dearly beloved grandson Nachum in Israel, and whoever else of the grandchildren want to tune in and learn together a Masechta, Masechta Sanhedrin, which is one of the most important Masechtas in Shas, a varied Masechta with a lot of Yediyas and very fundamental issues for the life of every Yid, of every Jew. Masechet Sanhedrin is based on a pasuk, a very well-known pasuk, the beginning of Parsha Shoftim in Sefer Devorim. Parsha Shoftim in Sefer Devorim begins with the words Shoftim v'shoitrim titen lecha b'chol sharecha asher Hashem Elokecha nosen lecha lishvatecha v'shoftu esaram mishpat tzedek. The Torah tells us that we have to appoint shoftim v'shotrim, judges and officers. You have to appoint for yourself where? B'chol sharecha, in all of your gates, in all of your cities, everywhere where there's a population of people living, that Hashem, your God, is giving you according to your tribes, according to the Shvatim. That's how Eretz Yisrael was divided. And what should these shoftim do? V'shoftu esa'am mishpat tzedek, and they shall judge the people a righteous judgment, mishpat tzedek. So here is the foundation of the Masechta, that we are taught by the Torah HaKadosha that the Jewish nation is commanded to set up a system of courts, a system of batei dinim, who will judge the people. This system includes different types of batei dinim, different types of courts. Each of these courts has their own level of authority. A court, a bezdin of Torah law, is known as a bezdin, and a bezdin literally means a house of law. Beit din, a house of law. A bezdin consists of a group of judges who hear and decide all cases. There's no jury. There's no jury in Jewish law. The dayanim, the judges who try the case, are also the very same people who question the witnesses, who evaluate and who weigh any evidence that is brought in, any legal documents that are brought into the case. And they ultimately hand down a psak din. A psak din is a verdict. They issue the ultimate final sentence. When, according to the halacha, the judges disagree, so a majority of one is enough to decide the case. In capital cases, though a majority of at least two is required to find the defendant guilty. So in all cases, a majority of one is all that is needed. In capital cases, a majority of two is required in order to find the defendant guilty, and we'll see that in a Mishnah later. That's a general introduction to the Masechta. So now let's get into the Masechta itself. We start in Mirz Hashem, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph tells us that there are three levels of court in halacha. The court of 3 judges, the court of 23 judges, which is considered like a lower Sanhedrin, and there is the ultimate high court of the Beis Din Hagadol, and the Beis Din Hagadol has 71 dayanim, Sanhedrin Gedola, the high court. The larger the court, the more authority it has, and the more types and categories of cases that it can try. So this Perek Aleph teaches which cases may be judged by which court. Which cases may be judged by each court. So the Mishnah begins, Dinei Mamonos B'Shloisha, monetary cases. Monetary cases specifically means disputes about loans, about halava, about malvim. Monetary cases, Dinei Mamonos, are judged by a court of 3. What does that mean? Cases of loans, disputes about loans. If one person claims that another borrowed money from him, and he brings aidim, he brings witnesses who testify that the other person indeed borrowed from him, or they testify that he admitted that he borrowed money from him. Either way, and the defendant denies the claim. So then a court of 3 judges must try the case. So Dini Mammon is B'Shloisha, so we're saying that this refers to cases of a halava, cases of loans. So disputes involving loans do not require that we have 3 dayonim mumchim, 3 ordained judges. Rather, any 3 knowledgeable men, any 3 people that are Talmidei Chachamim, honest, with integrity, are enough. Now, according to the Din HaTorah, according to biblical law, a judge does not have the authority unless he's a musmach, unless he's ordained. Talking about ordained, not like the ordination that we receive today. We're not talking about today's smicha. And this is derived. How do we know that they must be musmachim? How do we know that they must be ordained? That they need to have this higher level attainment of learning in Psak Din? It's learned from a pasuk in Shmois, Perek Chav Beis, Psukim Zayin and Ches, where the Torah talks about a Beis Din, and the Torah uses the word Elohim. Elohim is used as the term to describe a judge. Furthermore, at least 3 ordained judges are needed because the word Elohim appears 3 times in 3 verses describing, delineating the case of Dayanus, of a Beis Din. But the Chachamim made an exception in regard to loans. In regard to loans, the Chachamim decreed that even non-ordained judges, even judges who are not musmachim on that high level, needed for Dayanus in general, when it comes to loans, as long as the people are honest, knowledgeable, Talmidei Chachamim, well-reputed, they can also judge in terms of loans. Why did they make such an exception in regard to loans? Kedei shelo lino deles bifnei lovin. In order to avoid people not wanting to lend money to other people. Because if the potential lenders would see that they have to go to the trouble of finding 3 mumchim, they have to find 3 ordained judges when any kind of dispute occurs, they'll say, forget about it. I don't need to give anybody any loans. I don't need to bother. I don't need the trouble. For the same reason, the Chachamim allowed even one single judge to try cases of loans if he is a famous, well-known, highly regarded judge. That is called Beloshon HaGemara Yochid Mumche Larabim. Yochid Mumche Larabim. So only here does the Mishnah refer to non-ordained judges. All the other cases mentioned in the Mishnah that we will see must be tried by ordained judges, by mumchim. Okay, so now we can go weiter. Dinim hamonis b'shloisha. Loans are adjudicated by 3. Gzelos v'chavolos b'shloisha. Cases of theft and injury are also judged by a court of 3. Nezek v'chatzi nezek. Tashlumi chefel v'tashlumi harbo b'chamisha b'shloisha. Claims for full damages, half damages, double damage, double payments, and fourfold or fivefold payment are also judged by a court of 3. Let's take each of these separately so that we can understand exactly what it is that we're talking about. Gzelos v'chabolos b'shloisha, cases of theft and injury. A person who injures another person must compensate his victim, we know, for 5 things. Nezek, tsar, ripui, sheves, and boshes. Those are the 5 categories of payment that must be made to someone whom I injured, whom I harmed. Nezek for the damage, tsar for the pain, nezek tsar for the healing, for the loss of employment, and for the embarrassment. Nezek tsar, ripui for the pain, for the healing, and boshes. Nezek tsar, ripui, sheves, and boshes. The 5 categories that must be paid to anyone whom I injured. So that is gzeros v'chabolos b'shloisha, nezek v'chatzi nezek. What is chatzi nezek? What is chatzi nezek? What is tashlumi kefel? What is tashlumi arba v'chamisha? What are all these things? If an animal does damage intentionally, if an animal does nezek intentionally, its owner needs pay for only half the damage. That's chatzi nezek. This is because intentional damage is unusual for most animals, and therefore the owner was not expected to prevent it, because most animals don't go ahead and cause damage. If they did, you pay only chatzi nezek. However, once an animal has done such things, once an animal has done such nezek 3 times, and the owner was warned after each time, he needs to pay full damages. He must pay full damages should his animal attack a 4th time. That animal is called a muad. Mem vav ayin daled, a muad. A muad because she has now proven that she is a mazika. She causes damage. She's a mazik. Prior to that, most animals don't cause damage. And if an animal causes damage, it's a tam. It's a tam. It's just an animal. This happened to be. She got out of turn. She got out of whack. Then she pays. Then the owner pays chatzi nezek. So again, nezek v'chatzi nezek. Tashlumi kefel v'tashlumi arbo v'chamisha. The Torah commands us in Parshas Mishpatim that a person who stole in secret, a ganav, pays the owner double. He pays kefil. Kefil is double. That is, the item that he stole, right? Its value, it's worth $100. He pays $100. But he stole, so he also pays kefil. He stole, and he was found. He was found, and it was proven that he was a ganav. So he pays kefil. He pays $200. If, however, he stole a sheep or a goat, tovach u'mochar, and he slaughtered or sold it, so then he pays the owner 4 times the value of the animal. The double payment, means the kefil, the double payment, plus twice its value. If he stole an ox, sure. If he stole an ox and slaughtered it, or sold it, he pays the owner 5 times the ox's value. the double payment plus 3 times its value. All this is discussed and elaborated in Baba Kama Perik Zayin. So again, we have already. Again, dinim amunas b'shloisha, gzelos v'chabolos b'shloisha, nezek v'chati nezek, tashlumi chefel, v'tashlumi abo v'chamisha b'shloisha. All of these are adjudicated by a court of 3. Ha'oines ve'amefate ve'amoitzi shemra b'shloisha, divrei Rab Meir. Ha'oines ve'amefate, that is, if a man violates or seduces an unmarried virgin, Naro, she's a Naro, must pay a penalty of Chamishim Kesef, of 50 silver shekels. Yes, what is a Naro? A Naro is a girl between the ages of 12 and 12 and a half. So, what is a moitzi shemra? What is a moitzi shemra? A moitzi shemra is claims against a violator and a seducer, that's oinus umefate, and a slanderer. That's a moitzi shemra. What's a slanderer? A husband who falsely accuses his wife of adultery. That's a moitzi shemra. A husband who falsely accuses his wife of adultery. This refers again to a husband who falsely declares in court that his wife was not a virgin when he first had relations with her, and he claims that she committed adultery between the time of their kiddushin and their nisuin. Right? Marriage takes effect through two ceremonies, 2 acts: kiddushin and nisuin. Kiddushin makes this couple legally married in most respects, but they're not yet allowed to live together until they perform nisuim. But at the time of kiddushin, she's considered a married woman. Now, a woman who cohabits with another man after kiddushin, al pi halacha, in spite of the fact that there was no nisuin as yet, but if she cohabits with another man after kiddushin, she is guilty of adultery. And in those times, kiddushin, in the time of the Mishnah, in the time of the Gemara, kiddushin and nisuin were performed sometime apart. Nowadays, they are performed they're performed one after the other under the chuppah in one ceremony. Now, the husband also brings witnesses who testify falsely that she committed adultery. So if the Beis Din discovers that the witnesses were lying, so the husband must pay a penalty of 100 shekel. He also receives malchus, and he may never divorce her again. He may never divorce her against her will, even though he may be turned off from the whole thing. In order to find the husband guilty, a court of 3, a beis din of 3 ordained judges is required. This is the moitzi shemra. So the oinus in the mefate, again, the oinus in the mefate is one who violates or seduces an unmarried virgin. She's a nara, whereas the moitzi shemra is one who accuses his wife of being unfaithful to him, of cohabiting with someone else after the kiddushin, before the nisuyin. Such cases, oinus mefaten moitzi shemra, is in the beis din of shloisha. So says Rab Meir, divrei Rab Meir. The Chachamim say, no. A moitzi shemra cannot simply be adjudicated in a beis din of 3. Chachamim moitzi shemra be'esrim v'shloisha. You have to go to a higher court. You have to go to a beis din of esrim v'shloisha. A beis din of esrim v'shloisha is already a beis din that can adjudicate dinei nefoshes, capital punishment, capital crime. A beis din of 23 is a beis din that can issue a death sentence. So therefore, the Chachamim come along and say that Moitzi Shemra Be'esrim V'Shloisha, Moitzi Shemra cannot be adjudicated by a Bezdin of 3. It has to be adjudicated by a Bezdin of 23. Because it includes the possibility of capital punishment. That if this woman is found guilty, indeed, of having been unfaithful, of having cohabited with another man, she has a din of chayeves misa. And for that, you need a bezdin of 23. Okay? If the witnesses are indeed telling the truth, and the woman is convicted of adultery, so she's subject to the death penalty. Meir, on the other hand, says that 3 dayonim is enough, because if the case does lead to a capital case, if the case is ultimately found her to be guilty, so we add 20 dayonim, and then you have a bezdin of 23. But to start off, you don't assume that she's guilty. If you don't assume that she's guilty, she can be adjudicated by a bezdin of 3. The Chacham say, no, never mind. You have to start off because there is a potential, there's a possibility that she'll be chayav misa, and therefore you have to start off with a bezdin of 23. According to the Chachamim, if new judges are added, it'll look as if the original 3 were found to be disqualified or incompetent. And therefore, 23 judges are, according to the Chachamim, required from the start. Okay, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the Mishnah. We'll go weiter the next time to Mishnah Beis.